How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brown Logan, and today we're going to talk about the whole Russia kerfuffle again. Yes, again, because we have another big news story. Bob Mueller has indicted 13 Russian nationals as it relates to the whole 2016 election fraud or election. I'm not really sure what they want to call it, electioneering. Basically trying to say that the Russians were involved with trying to influence the 2016 presidential campaign. Now, before we even get into the article, because I don't know what this article has in it, this article is on Breitbart, and I presume they have the correct information, but for what I've been able to research on my own, aside from this article, there's a video that actually has it straight from the White House, and I will put that in the description box below. But basically what they said was that Russian nationals from, I think it was an internet research agency, some kind of really bland and unimportant name, they were buying Facebook posts, Twitter posts, Facebook profiles, and they were posting so-called propaganda, basically memes, pictures. I heard they were trying to organize rallies for Trump, stuff like that. So I did not know that was illegal. I didn't know that you couldn't go to Facebook and buy ads. I've bought ads on Facebook before. And then I didn't know that it was illegal to buy ads on Facebook and other social media that relates to politics, because I saw all kind of ads on Facebook about politics that did not come from the Russians. I was seeing celebrities endorse Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump on social media. People like LeBron James and others, Jay-Z, Beyonce, were endorsing Hillary Clinton, not only live in person, but also on social media. I was seeing music videos coming from Lena Dunham featuring Charlamagne the God, who was on radio in New York. I was seeing people talk on radio in other places other than New York, all around the country, all supporting Hillary Clinton. And then let's not talk about all the media on television who were in Hillary Clinton's corner and also in Hillary Clinton's pocket, plus the Democratic National Convention, how they were exclusively pro-Hillary at the detriment of Bernie Sanders. Now, if buying Facebook ads to, that had political leanings on it is illegal, then surely those other things must be illegal as well. I think this is a big giant witch hunt, but we're going to get into the article to see exactly what's going on with this whole situation. And the article reads, Special Counsel Robert Mueller rocked Washington, D.C. on Friday with the announcement of a new series of indictments of Russian agents who allegedly interfered with the U.S. presidential election in 2016. Like I said, I think they might have spent $400,000 total. This is the total amount, and it was like 12 or 13 people on Facebook ads. I mean, come on. Where's the crime? I want to know the crime. I've been doing a lot of reading about this. I've yet to see the crime. Let's see if we see the crime in this article. The 37-page indictment contains a number of key revelations about the investigation, and for the first time, U.S. government law enforcement authorities have in detail demonstrated the operations of a sophisticated Russian-run conspiracy, complete with stunts, rallies, paid political advertisements, a fake social media presence, and falsified identities with Russian pretending to be Americans, and even communicated with unwitting members of the President Donald Trump 2016 campaign. Now, here it is right here. They're talking about social media stunts. What kind of stunts are they talking about? Rallies. So basically, if they put a so-called fake social media profile on Facebook endorsing a rally that was already going to happen, does that mean that they're somehow guilty of something? What are they guilty of? And again, paid political advertisements. There's all kind of advertisements. I mean, if you live in a place where there's a political race going on, right now you're going to see a political ad. Right now in Tennessee, where I am, I'm going to see political ads on television. So can the ads not be paid for by foreign money, or is it just about Russia? This is really just crazy. It's a big conspiracy against Russia. They're talking about it's a Russian-run conspiracy, and then they want to talk about sophisticated. In the video I saw, they were talking about they had graphic designers and people to do SEO. So basically, they call sophisticated a small ad agency. I've had a small ad agency before. You can almost say that I am right now, me, Anthony Brown Logan, sitting here. I am an ad agency. So am I like this highly sophisticated tool of the government? Come on, this is really silly. It also seems to disprove the notion that the Trump campaign engaged in collusion with the Russians, at least in this particular case, despite contacts these Russians allegedly had with the Trump campaign officials and associates. But the latest Mueller indictment details the extent to which Russians aggressively sowed the seeds of chaos, in American politics to push on behalf of Trump and Democrat Bernie Sanders and against Democrat Hillary Rodham Clinton and Republicans Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio. Now, sowed the seeds of chaos. Again, we're talking about social media posts. So if you have just a random troll that's posting about, Trump 2020 or Trump 2016 for back then, and they say that, lock her up, it might have a t-shirt that says lock her up with Hillary Clinton's face on it and her name, does that mean that that random individual sowed the seeds of chaos? The language being used is really just over the top, and it just plays into the whole Boris and Natasha, Ivan Drago killing Apollo Creed. If he dies, he dies. The Red Scare. It plays into that whole narrative to make people think that Russia is this big bad bully and an enemy, because I guess you got to have somebody that's the enemy. What better place than a mostly white Christian nation? They can't have it be somewhere like in the Middle East, because then that'd be racist. But I digress. President Trump says that this indictment vindicates him with regards to the Russia investigation, demonstrating that there was no collusion between his campaign and the Russians. Yes, because you see right here in the tweet, I'll read it. Russia started their anti-U.S. campaign in 2014, long before I announced that I would run for president. The results of the election were not impacted. The Trump campaign did nothing wrong. No collusion. He's correct, because in the 37 pages, it says that the whole thing started in 2014. He did not announce his run until 2015. It also says in the report that the actual election was not impacted. So where's the collusion going on here? While Trump is correct on that note that this indictment does not demonstrate collusion between his campaign and the Russians, that indictment does once and for all clearly demonstrate that the Russians engaged in a sophisticated effort to influence U.S. political events in 2016. Again, we're talking about Facebook posts and Twitter posts and Instagram stuff. So if you were out there, you have a small business and you posting a bunch of stuff online about your business and has a political lean to it, maybe they're going to come visit you. I don't know. It also leaves open the possibility of future election action by Mueller, as evidenced by the language the special counsel used in the indictment and the language used by the Department of Justice officials rolling out the indictment for the press. Here's a tweet from Alexander Panetta. It says, Judge Andrew Napolitano on Fox News just now. This is the tip of the iceberg. Says notice the indictment constantly refers to the defendants' unnamed co-conspirators. Says these people haven't been named, and when they are, if they're American, they could be in trouble. Bloomberg News cited a person with knowledge of Mueller's investigation in a report on Friday afternoon to note that this indictment is just the beginning of actions to be expected and avenues to be explored by Mueller in the coming months ahead. Bloomberg's Chris Strong wrote, Special Counsel Robert Mueller and his prosecutors haven't concluded their investigation into whether President Donald Trump or any of his associates helped Russia interfere in the 2016 election. Now, if that's the case, then why roll out the indictments right now? What more needs to be done? Are you going to indict anybody else? I don't really know what's going on. According to a person with knowledge of the probe, Friday's indictment of a St. Petersburg-based quote-unquote troll farm, yes, troll farm, and 13 Russian nationals should be seen as a limited slice of a comprehensive investigation, the person said. Mueller's work is expected to continue for months and also includes examining potential obstruction of justice by Trump, said the person, who requested anonymity to discuss an investigation that is largely confidential. So we're talking about, like I said, the most basic things. We're not talking about anybody coming over here, anybody getting hurt, no Russian spies, none of that crazy stuff. No lawyers coming to Trump and exchanging information between him and Vladimir Putin. We're talking about trolls on Twitter. That's what this whole thing is about. That's what they've been able to find. In the words of Van Jones, this is a nothing burger, but I digress. The indictment targets 13 Russians as well as Internet Research Agency LLC, which is a St. Petersburg-based organization that pushes influence operations on behalf of the Russian government. The indictment alleges that those 13 Russians and Internet Research Agency, as well as fellow Russian firms, Concord Management and Consulting LLC and Concord Catering. Like I said, Internet Research Agency, that's basically an ad agency, and there's only about 400 grand that's been expended in this whole so-called complex and sophisticated operation, which is really a nothing burger. That's nothing. One person over here in the U.S. could give that much money to one random company. So you're talking about a company with a bunch of employees with, I presume, many financial backers. All they could do is spend 400 grand on ads. I mean, come on. And the article continues, knowingly and intentionally conspired with each other and with persons known and persons unknown to the grand jury to defraud the United States by impairing, obstructing, and defeating the lawful functions of the government through fraud and deceit for the purpose of interfering with the U.S. political and electoral process, including the presidential election in 2016. So I guess this is where the actual crime has happened. This is where the illegality comes in. But I think the only way they're going to get them or any kind of fraud or deceit is by some of the profiles not really being the person who they depict. So if you get a fake Facebook request from some model or something like that, it's potential that that person could be charged with some kind of crime for fraud and deceit by not letting you know who they are from the beginning. I'm wondering if any of the cases have been tried and convicted under the same thing, because this would be a precedent setter right here. The scheme, the indictment alleges, began as far back as 2014 and continued until after the 2016 presidential election. U.S. intelligence authorities and officials say the Russians intend to engage in similar actions in 2018's midterm elections here in the U.S. and further elections thereafter. Now, everywhere on Twitter, when anybody says anything that goes against the liberal narrative, you got the left, the blue check mafia calling them a Russian troll. I have been called a Russian troll on many occasions, and people really believe it. If you say something that's against the left, if you say something that's conservative or it might be a little controversial to them in their humble opinion, they say, oh, this is fake. You're fake Russian bot. That is the narrative that has been pushed successfully by these people. It's really a shame. While the indictment does not say how much money these Russian entities spent on this, I've read 400,000. It does say that Concord and Russian oligarch Vladimir Putin ally Yevgeny Prigozhin spent significant funds to further the operations of the Internet Research Agency and to, quote, pay the remaining defendants, unquote, along with others not charged in this indictment but employed by Internet Research Agency. My question is, who got indicted? If it's 13 Russians, who got indicted? You're talking about employees of a company. I mean, what kind of mess is that? So let's say, for example, you're just a regular person in Russia, Moscow. You got a family and you're looking on whatever Russia's version of Craigslist or Indeed.com is. You try to find a job and you get a job with your degree. You may be a graphic designer. You may be, an IT. You may be good at SEO, whatever. And you get hired by this company. It's legitimate. Everything's above board. You paying taxes, not the whole nine. Now all of a sudden, here comes the U.S. and says, you know what? We need to indict you on federal charges because of election fraud. It's like, what? I'm doing my job. I'm coming in here. Everything's above board. I'm getting paid. I'm paying taxes. What do you mean? In a Friday report filed from St. Petersburg, the New York Times' Neil McFarquhar, I know I butchered that name. I'm sorry. Noted that Prigozhin is a Russian oligarch with deep connections to Putin. Despite his humble, troubled youth, Mr. Prigozhin became one of Russia's richest men, joining a charmed circle whose members often share one particular attribute: their proximity to President Vladimir V. Putin. McFarquhar wrote, "The small club of loyalists who gain Mr. Putin's trust often feast, as Mr. P, we'll call him that, I cannot pronounce his name, has on enormous state contracts. In return, they are expected to provide other darker services to the Kremlin as needed." So basically, they're alleging some quid pro quo. Some of that, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Mr. P himself, per the Times, quoting him via Russian state media outlet RIA Novosti responded to the indictment in dark terms. Quote, "The Americans are very irresponsible people. They see what they want to see." He says, "I have a lot of respect for them. I'm not upset at all that I ended up on this list. If they want to see the devil, then let them see him." Okay. The Mueller indictment alleges that these Russian actors engaged in paid and other social media efforts, as well as staging political rallies and sowing discord in the U.S. and using identity politics by propping up causes like Black Lives Matter, pro-Islamic causes, religious entities, and more. And they did it by posing as U.S. persons with falsified or stolen identities. The indictment reads, let's see what this indictment says. Let's see what this portion of it says. I'm very interested because I didn't know that it was somehow illegal to be supporting Black Lives Matter. I mean, I say Black Lives Matter is a terrorist group, but according to the left and the U.S. government, as far as I know, they are not a terrorist group. I think that people that may be associated with Black Lives Matter and other groups similar to that may be BIEs, Black Identity Extremists, but it's not illegal to be that at this moment. Nor are pro-Islamic causes and other so-called religious entities. What is that? Is that Christian? Is it Jewish? What is it? Defendants posing as U.S. persons and creating false U.S. personas operated social media pages and groups designed to attract U.S. audiences. Those groups and pages, which address divisive U.S. political and social issues, falsely claimed to be controlled by U.S. activists when, in fact, they were controlled by defendants. Defendants also use the stolen identities of real U.S. to post and organization-controlled social media accounts. Over time, these social media accounts became defendants' means to reach significant numbers of Americans for the purpose of interfering with the U.S. political system, including the presidential election of 2016. Some of these Russia-based defendants, the indictment alleges, traveled to the United States under false pretenses for the purpose of collecting intelligence and obtained and procured and used computer infrastructure that was partially American-based to hide the Russian origin of their activities to avoid detection by U.S. regulators and law enforcement. Now, let's convert that, break it down, translate it into layman's terms. Basically, people from Russia got on Twitter and posted some things, and they didn't use their real name, and they also came to the U.S. maybe for one reason, but then they may have stayed in a hotel, hooked up to the Wi-Fi, and then continued to post on Twitter. Because when they're talking about procured and used computer infrastructure, what does that really mean? You're talking about internet and a router. So I guess the router and the internet is procuring and using computer infrastructure. Maybe they went to Best Buy and purchased a router that they can use, and maybe they use a VPN, a virtual private network, if I'm not mistaken, to hide their IP address. All these things I thought were legal, but I guess when you're talking about the Russians, it's not really legal. Let's see what else we have here in this article. The indictment also details contacts that these Russians posing as Americans with assumed or stolen identities had multiple contacts with quote unquote unwitting campaign officials with President Trump's campaign. Internet Research Agency, the indictment says, had a strategic goal to sow discord in the U.S. political system, and that the defendants posted derogatory information about a number of candidates. And by early to mid 2016, defendants' operations included supporting the presidential campaign of then candidate Donald J. Trump campaign, and disparaging Hillary Clinton. So basically, they're talking about they were trolling Hillary and or Hillary supporters in support of Donald Trump. That's all. And this indictment says defendants made various expenditures to carry out these activities, including buying political advertisements on social media in the names of U.S. persons and entities. Defendants also staged political rallies inside the U.S. and while posing as U.S. grassroots entities and U.S. persons and without revealing their Russian identities and organization affiliation, solicited and compensated real U.S. persons to promote or disparage candidates. Some defendants posing as U.S. persons and without revealing their Russian association communicated with unwitting individuals and associated with the Trump campaign and with other political activists to coordinate political activities. Okay, there's not a whole lot here in this article more than what I've already read. It's the same old thing. It's a pretty long article here. You could read the rest of it, and I will put it in the box. But basically, it's like this. there's not really much here. They're talking about an internet research agency. They're talking about, they came here to the U.S. and used the Wi-Fi and stuff like that. So I guess that is enough to say, well, you guys are guilty of something. Maybe not, maybe not hurting somebody, maybe not killing somebody, but you're guilty of not revealing your identity, of saying exactly where you're from. Isn't that xenophobia? Must you reveal where you're from? I don't know. I'm just talking out loud here. But as I close, I want to say this. This is a really silly situation. I don't really, it's nothing here. Even if people do get arrested, and then that's the whole thing right there. If you're indicting Russian nationals, I don't think they're going to be here in the U.S. Are you going to be able to extradite them? No. So this is really nothing. Maybe this was designed to be this way because we could say we did something. So the left, they can't just be like, oh, they didn't do anything. They're in bed with the Russians, all this, that, and the third. They're being partisan. No, you can't say that because we did indict some people, even though it was nothing. But that's the whole point. There is nothing here. There's nothing to see here. This whole thing started in 2014. So how can you say that Trump was involved? And how can you say Trump was involved anyway if these things were going on without his knowledge, without him being directly in it and having direct input? The way that the media talks about this is if Trump has been there the entire time, allowing the Russians to have access to the White House and all this, that, and the third. He's just running for president. Now, whatever some random agency decides to do on their own accord, maybe on his behalf or not on his behalf, is their business and not his. If I come out and make a video pro-Trump and it has some things in it that offend some people, does that mean that Trump is to blame? Or are you going to say, hey, that guy over there did the video independently, it's his fault? I want to see what the rest of the so-called investigation is going to bring. I doubt it's going to bring anything, because if it was, then you would see it right now. If it's nothing right now, then what is it going to be later? Probably more of the same. So what do you think? Do you think this is a witch hunt? Is it going to be a big nothing burger at the very end of the day? Do you think it's a valid investigation? Should we be locking people up over election fraud and stuff like that? And again, if you saw something I didn't see, if there was more in the article I didn't read towards the end, please let me know. But all I've seen is they made Facebook pages, Instagram pages, Twitter pages, and they bought some ads in those platforms, and that's it. And really, it wasn't even like a bunch of places. You can buy ads on Facebook and Instagram at the same time. Twitter, I'm not sure if you can buy ads. Yeah, you can. You can buy ads. You can promote stuff. But that's it. And as I close, I want to say this. Much of what they allege that Internet Research Agency and the 13 Russians, much of what they promoted, people like myself and many others that are actually Americans and not Russian bots, unlike what some of the liberals think about me. I think I'm a Russian bot because I think they don't agree with, but I digress. Any of us that are on the right and not on the left could have said those same things and have said those same things. That's most likely where the Internet Research Agency got their posts from, is from guys like myself and other people on the internet that say those exact same things. It was real basic stuff. Tweets like "Make America Great Again," pro Bernie posts, pro Black Lives Matter, and stuff like that. And one last thing I want to say is, how do we know that these people weren't hired by people to do it? I think in the indictment it says they didn't know they were Russian. Personally, I really don't care what you are, what your nationality is. I might hear an accent, but if I'm trying to do business and I see your portfolio, I'm not necessarily going to ask about where you came from. And is it even necessary to do business? Why must you know my country of origin in order to spend money with me? If you like what I do, you appreciate what I do, then that should be enough. Maybe you might want to know if you want to spend money, that's your business. But why should a person be required to do so? I don't have too much more to say. Whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.